Everyone, and welcome to another episode where we're going to be looking at the pages from the Gospel of Matthew. Let's move on to the page. Now you'll notice something very similar. It's the same page as on the little intro thing. But you'll notice as well he doesn't have any writing on there at the moment. He will do, because that's intended that it will look a bit like this one. But this one, because I wanted to have a little intro, piece that, I did a, just a example. But the actual text, I'm intending to have him writing the text that be the right text that's round about. Now, people believe that Matthew's Gospel was written in Aramaic first, and then converted into Greek, and now obviously we have it in the ancient Greek. But it's possible that he wrote parts of it in Greek, and also it's possible that the genealogies, which is this bit, he might have copied out in Greek as well, because if he was copying it out like, history, that would have potentially been written in Greek for him to copy out. Do you know what I mean? His source might have been in Greek. So it may be that if I can't get hold of the Aramaic text for this, I believe that it's possible to get it, and I think that I know somebody who has a book with it in it, but I'm finding out, and if they don't, I'm going to use the Greek, which is valid too. Now, that's not what we wanted to show you. But so, for example, here's the verse, so here, so it's just one of the verses, but he'll be writing it out, so it'll look a bit like this, but it's not handwritten, and you can see it sort of says, after then the carrying away to Babylon, Jeconiah begat Shealtiel. And you'll notice this word's not written, and I was like, what is that then? And it's just like the, and it's like, it's Jeconiah begat the Shealtiel, and Shealtiel begat the Zerubbabel, and so it's like, but obviously we don't say it like that, so that's why they don't use that word. Oops, don't want to put back here. Right, so yeah, then, so he'll be writing those things out here on his parchment, and that is Matthew, as you know from before, when in the Book of Mark. Then it ends, goes through the lineage, and the reason I decided to do it this way, so we just come from the page where you had a little picture of each person. Well, with these people, we don't know anything about them pretty much, so that's why it's just a list of names, and it is a list of names in the picture. At the end, it comes to where Joseph is. So Mathan, the father of Jacob, Jacob, the father of Joseph, and then the actual text says the husband of Mary, and Mary was the mother of Jesus, blah blah. But it's the narration jumping forward in the story to, as it does. But I thought, because we're gonna have the story and have pictures and everything with it, I just thought, well, we don't need that bit. So there's a couple of times where I've done that, where the narration will be like jump ahead. So for example, with the Gospel, it's like when they had the 12 disciples, and then the last one's Judas. It's like, and there was Judas who went on to betray Jesus. I was like, well, as a book, we don't want to have a spoiler in the middle, like for people who don't, it's like, can you believe it that people would be reading it but not know? And I think today that is very possible, that people would read the Gospel and not remember or know that Judas was, betrays Jesus and stuff. So not exactly the same here, because it's a Christmas story, so everybody knows, but just thought it would flow better. So anyway, so you got Jacob, father of Joseph, so you got Joseph. Then it says, thus to the 14th generation, da da da. In the picture itself, you can see Joseph, who gets introduced. He's wearing the blues colours, which denote his in the comic, people's clans, and his is Judah, so it's blue. He's carrying like carpenter's adze. Now, we think of Joseph as a carpenter, and he may have been a carpenter, but the word for what he was is a tekton, and in Greek, and it's like it's a builder, basically. Somebody builds buildings, most likely, and it's interesting because tekton, you think, oh, I've not had that word before, but it's actually in our vocabulary as well, because you get the head tekton, the arch tekton. It's called arch tekton, architect, and so we still have that kind of word in our vocabulary. So he wasn't an arch tekton; he was just a tekton, but that's what he was. And but either way, he may have used an adze, so I've given him one. In the background is his house. Back here, it's got a little hammer and some more woodworking tools, and a little cover for him to work outside in the shade. Now, there's some houses, just generic houses, but here as well, you've got the synagogue, and I wanted to show the synagogue because we've seen it before in the Gospel of Mark when Jesus goes back to Nazareth and the people are like, who's this? Who's the son of Mary and brother of blah blah blah? And we show their synagogue then, so I thought it'd be nice to have it there at the beginning. Also then you've got Mary, of course, and she's riding a donkey. I wanted to do two things by putting her on a donkey. One, it's because she is often shown on a donkey, so people are going to instantly recognise that it's probably her. But also because in theory, this bit that's about to happens after she comes back from seeing her kinsfolk Elizabeth and Zechariah with the baby John the Baptist, which we know what happens from the book of Luke. And so this is probably the most likely time where she tells Joseph about the baby, and so that's why I've got her on the donkey. She's returning from a journey. So he's there. He's got his thing on his head. He's working in the sun and everything. Now, finally, this guy is Mary's father. You probably worked that out from the fact he's very close to her, much older. And now it's something that I talked to. So one of the scholars who assists me is Chris, and he's Chris Smith. He looked at this and was like, I can't remember what he said, but it's something like, basically like, why have you put the father in there? The thing is, she must have had a father, and in order to get married, most likely there was an agreement between then the father and the Joseph about the marriage. But we learn from Luke's Gospel. When we read Luke's Gospel, we understand that it's basically this story, but from Mary's point of view. And can go into complicated stuff, perhaps too complicated to cover well, but it's believed then that the reason that there's a difference between the way that the genealogy goes of Jesus when Matthew presents it as to when Luke presents it is that Matthew's going down through the line to the royal line to Joseph, and it ends with Joseph as the father of Jesus, in the sense that he's the legal adoptive father of Jesus, and that legally Jesus, because he's adopted by Joseph, is legally his son and therefore can inherit, and so he inherits the right of king's line or whatever from Joseph in that way. But he's not a blood descendant of Joseph, and that's because in the Bible, in the Old Testament, I think it's Jeconiah who, or is it Jehoiakim? I can't remember. One or the other. The king gets cursed by God that his bloodline will no longer rule on the throne and things like that. And so, because the Messiah needs to rule from David's throne, it's like, well, the person I listened to called Chuck Mr. who's explaining it, who I'll see if I can find a link and link it below, saying, that the devil must have been like, oh, God's really snookered himself here, because there has to be a Messiah from David's line, but now there can be no kings from this line because God's just cursed it. And so Joseph is the legal heir of that line, and Jesus is an adopted into it. But that wouldn't necessarily be enough to have a full claim to the throne, whereas in Luke the genealogy is different, and it goes down through Nathan, one of David's sons, I think, and then down until it gets to it's sort of like Joseph again, but it says Joseph, who's, and the Greek's difficult, but it's like who's reckoned the son of, and he's like basically again, it gets very complicated, but basically the idea is if Mary is the last, if Mary is the only, not the only, if Mary is the daughter of this guy and he doesn't have any male heirs, he doesn't have any sons at all, he maybe has multiple daughters but he's got no sons, that she will be the rightful inheritor, or rather her husband will become the rightful inheritor of the estate, and that's how it works, that she inherits if there's no sons, and it's worked out in the book of Joshua. It even is a bit of the comic that I've even drawn, where the daughters come to Joseph and say, there's no male left in our line, and he says, that the women can inherit. And so in Luke it seems to be that the line of David goes through the blood of Mary, that she's descended from David, but not through the royal line, not through Jehoiakim or whoever it was that was cursed. And so she has a claim, her bloodline is descended from David, but not directly through the royal line. So Jesus, as a result, has the royal blood from her and has the royal legal right from him. And so that's why the virgin birth is actually important and necessary in a way to circumvent the curse that God places in the Old Testament. Anyway, that becomes a bit of a divergence. Suffice to say that Mary has a father, and he is potentially the one who is mentioned in the book of Luke. Now, moving on. This is the scene where then Joseph finds out about the baby, and the narration kind of skips over it, but I've drawn it out. So if you read the narration, it says, this is how it came, this is how the birth of Jesus and the Messiah came about. But before they came together, she was, and then I've got her saying the words, so I dropped a bit of the words to make it so that it worked tense-wise. So she's speaking, saying, pregnant through the Holy Spirit. And he's surprised, and let's keep going. And then it talks about his reaction. So basically, so I wanted to have the moment on screen, not just have it narrated. So that's what I've done. And I thought it's reasonable that she has a father. It's reasonable that if she is although she's betrothed to Joseph, she's not gonna like be on her own in private with him, right? So there's going to be a chaperone. The chaperone's most likely to be the father. So that's why he's there. And I thought as well it's reasonable to assume that Mary told Joseph. I mean, it's possible that the father did, of course, but because we don't know either way, I thought it would be better to show Mary as being the one who went ahead and told Joseph, so it's not like she's wimping out of it or anything, but she's a strong woman who's going to tell him what's what. And so, she speaks and tells him that she's pregnant through the Holy Spirit. He's surprised. He obviously doesn't believe her. And before I skip on to the next bit, I'll talk about the image itself. So you've got the father. He has, again, the Judah clan colours and sort of symbols and stuff. And she, the same, has the pattern. I drew Mary in the Gospel of Mark as older, but it was good then to draw her now. This is obviously the introduction to Mary. This the previous page. The way that she looks turned out well. I think she does look young, and because the luxury of having a comic rather than a film or something is that it's quite ambiguous. Like, how old does she look? As you look at, just these few pen strokes, you're like, well, she could be like 16 or less, or maybe 20. So it's good. So I think that it well shows that she's very young. The reason that people believe that this is the point where he most likely found out about it is because if following the events in the other books, Luke and everything, she obviously gets told she's pregnant by Gabriel, that she'll be pregnant. Then she gets pregnant. Then she goes on a little journey to see Elizabeth, and she stays there 3 months. So she's there through her first trimester, and it's at the end of that she would start to sort of show, not very, very obviously, but a bit. And so she does return. She's obviously going to talk to Joseph and everything. And, the other thing is that the first 12 weeks is the most likely that, you might miscarry and stuff. So I guess she's like, I'm not going to tell him when it might not even happen. So that's why I think people think, she goes away, she comes back when it starting to be obvious, but it's probably going to happen, and that's the time. So she's just gone back from seeing Elizabeth. It's believed that Elizabeth and Zechariah probably live near Jerusalem because Zechariah works in the temple, right? So he has to go there quite often, not like every day, but he has to go there for a period of I can't remember, but it's something like a week every month or every few months or something, because they work in these courses. The priests have turns and stuff, and so the priest will go there for a bit and work there for a while and then come back to the home. So, but they probably live not very far away from Jerusalem, and we know that Mary's in Nazareth, so that is far away. So she goes away. The last thing to mention then about this picture is that in the background you can see a traditional home of the time where they got alcoves built into the wall, which could use as little shelves or cupboards and things like that. On the shelves we've got clay made bowls, plates, etc., and some of the ornaments that are period. And then just like wooden spoons and stuff like that, and we see as well there's this item here. All of these are drawn from real first century Hebrew kind of things. Oh, and the last thing about the room is in the middle here. You can see there's like we can't necessarily make it out very well, but it's like a chimney. Oh, I know what I should do. Show you the photo. First of all, this one is the reference for the inbuilt walls, the things in the walls. A bit closer for you. This is from the Nazareth project, where they rebuilt the houses like they were. So you can see some of the items in the shelves and stuff are some of the items I've used. And so that's the reference for that. I'm just going to get the other one. So this is the reference. So this is like a common person's house. It has that irritating thing. Well, here we go. Okay, it's not too bad. So this is like a chimney type thing where they can have a little fire or a lamp and things like that, and then there's a raised up part and then there's a lower down part. This lower down part's like stable, where they bring the animals in at night. So if it was so if you had like a few sheep or whatever, or some goats and things, you bring them in at night, and a donkey or whatever, and then they stay in this part of the house, which is lower down, and then they've got the troughs here, and then the family would sleep up on this bit. So obviously this is a very small house, and this is then also the model which is believed when they say Mary and Joseph were staying, and there was no room in the house. What did it say? There's an article on it on our thing, which is like there was no room in the upper room for them to stay or something like that. But basically they couldn't stay in this bit, so they had to stay in the stable. So they stayed in this bit. So it's just like the lower floor, and then the troughs, which is the manger where they then put the baby. So they stay down here, where you would normally have the animals. And we don't know if the people then hosting them had the animals in as well, or if the animals were then just not put in there. So considering she's having a baby and stuff, she basically probably just didn't have them in. They probably were out for the night or put in a different place or in a neighbour's front place, the animals. So anyway, that's why that's there. And anyway, so back to the story. He's surprised that she's saying that she's pregnant with the Holy Spirit, for the Holy Spirit. And then it narrates his thoughts, but essentially, so it's like, because Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law, so the implication being that if she was pregnant out of wedlock, in the law, she should then be stoned. So he's like, I'm cross, and maybe she should be stoned because that's the law. And yet was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace. So here he's thinking, judgment, and then he's thinking, mercy. He's softening his sort of thoughts. He's like, but I don't really want Mary to be stoned to death. That would be bad. So then he doesn't say anything and he just leaves. It says he had in mind to divorce her quietly. So I've narrated it such that he's having these reactions like, law, no, that would be bad. And then he's like, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll just put her away quietly. And he leaves. And then I've got him sad, walking home, because obviously he probably doesn't believe that it's really God, and but she has got pregnant and he's not the father, so his plans are all messed up. And so he goes home and he lies in bed. Now I've strung this little bit out where it's to give the mood like that he's really sad about it, and then here he's lying in bed and he's got tears, and this is a little thing that you often do, a little bulging vein in the head to indicate that somebody's really stressed. And also I've got him looking up, so there's nothing here, he's in an empty room, but I wanted to imply that he's like, and he's angry, yeah. So he's angry and he's looking up, and I wanted to imply that he's angry with like God, basically, saying like, why, God, did he let this happen and stuff like that. He's got no clothes because probably the way people would sleep. And then here he's angry, still unstressed, but he's going to sleep. Then the last page that we covered today, I think, is this one. So he goes to sleep, and in his dream it says, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. And so we got the angel speaking, Joseph, son of David. Oops. Do not be afraid, take Mary as your wife. Now, so let's go from the bottom to the top. So we got him lying there, as we just saw him a second ago. He's asleep, and this is the real world or whatever. And he's also sweating and stressed, and he's having a scary dream, a nightmare or whatever. And then this is his dream self. And here we have the angel. Now I'm trying to get it on the screen properly. There we go. And so this is Gabriel, who is appearing to him. And I mean, I think we know it's Gabriel, do we? Maybe it's not. But it's Gabriel that comes to Mary, so we assume it is. Now, here again, if you're interested in the appearance, please have a look at our blog about drawing cherubim, and where it kind of explains it. But in essence, you've got these wings, so 1, 2, and then sort of there's one up here which you can't see as well, 3, so 4, 5, 6, so it makes 6 wings. Also there's this is like clothes, essentially like a robe or something like that. But the idea is to draw it in a way where you're like, oh, I think I can figure it out, and then you're like, his clothes, are they wrapped around him, or are they, is he this wide, or is it just this bit and then it's blowing that? It's supposed to be kind of like sort of clear but a little bit confusing. So the idea is that he's wearing this sheet or something, like a robe, but it's like blowing in the wind or something like that. Here as well, they got the extra stars where it's like the eyes and stuff on it, and stars being linked to angels anyway, but they're like the eyes or that are supposed to be on their skin all over them and things like that. The head then is, as with the blog, multiple faces all at the same time. So instead of being 4 faces where it's like the one facing north is really, really like a lion, and the one facing forward is really like a man, and they're all stuck on each other. I've done it so that they are sort of see-through and they're kind of overlapping each other. On the left, then, you can see that this one is like supposed to be lion-like. And so you see the nose, and then the eye, cheek, and then the chin or whatever. So it's supposed to be lion-like. It's not supposed to be exactly a lion. But again, you've got the brow is making up a sort of like an ear, almost like a lion, but it's not necessarily an ear. It's like a brow. On this side, you've got the one that's I usually draw as a more eagle-like one, where it's got a pointed, very pointy face, and also it's got like a wing, almost like an ear, or like almost like a helmet with a wing on it, sort of thing. The one that's a bull is one of the ones that I actually did draw, but then I got rid of. I just thought, let's have the horns. So you've got these horns coming up, and again the face of the man I had, but I got rid of. I wonder, I'm thinking about it, I wonder if I deleted them or if they're still here. I think I deleted them. But yeah, no, I thought if they were still there I could have showed you the alternatives. But in the end, I thought, because I had a man one there, but I thought it's better actually if I just get rid of the face in the middle, but keep the eyes, so that Their face is sort of invisible apart from the eyes, and then the eyes themselves. So they kind of go in a bow, and you've got the two sort of eyes you'd expect. This lion one has an eye there. There's an extra eye here. There's two here which kind of make the eyes for that one, and then this extra eye which kind of mirrors that eye is the middle forehead eye of that one, and then this one's got a forehead one as well, and then this one, and this one's like left eye or whatever is the, so the idea is that it's a mixture where they're all kind of got, all the eyes make up the different eyes of the face, but in the end it just makes lots of eyes, some sort of face, wings thing going on. And then lastly in the background as well I put stars, because I wasn't sure what to put in the background, but then I thought actually if I put stars, because A, they're linked to angels, and B, it gives the idea that he's not in his room anymore, because if it's just dark it would be like maybe he's in his room and the angel's in there, but it's not that. It's like he's in a dream and his angel's in the dream. So and then lastly, by having the stars, it's like you don't know what size the angel is. I mean, if it's compared to him, it's obviously already giant size because it's got heads like 8 times bigger than his. But but then with stars, like it could be light years across or something like that. So anyway, then the angel talks, and we use the prophetic images as we've done many times with the pink and everything, and it talks about Jesus. So because what is conceived in her womb is from the Holy Spirit, and again because we believe that this is the 3 months in, I've drawn a baby 3 months in. So this is what the little fetus will look like, and the 12 to 16 weeks or something. So yeah, looks like that. The other thing is I wanted to show a baby in the womb to have a subtle sort of pro-life thing, that they're talking about Jesus, and making decisions about him and everything, and he's still in the womb, but this is like him, and he's in the womb, and he's the same. I mean, we haven't done the Luke, but when John the Baptist is also in the womb and he jumps for joy when he's in the womb, so I thought it was important. Then it talks about she will give birth to a son, and he will give him the name Jesus, because he will save his people from sins. So the name Jesus is, I think we all know that Jesus is an anglicised, or that's probably not the right word, but a Greek version of Jesus' actual name, which then through the thousands of years has been anglicised into Jesus. It was like Iesus with an I instead of a J and things like that, and that's because originally the first letter is basically a Y, and then so anyway, Yeshua is Jesus's proper name, might not be perfectly pronounced, but with a Y, and Yeshua is also the name of Joshua, who is from the book of Joshua, because it's the same name. It's just that it's been rendered into our language differently for different characters, which in some ways is actually really helpful, because you're like, okay, Joshua did this and Jesus did this, but it's the same name. So Jesus is in a way named after Joshua from the book of Joshua, who succeeds after Moses, leads the people in the land, and so it's saying in a way that's linking Jesus with Joshua, and Joshua, the name, it says saves, so the Lord saves, and it's that Yah, is the first bit, yeah, is the Lord, and then Joshua or whatever is the save bit. So God saves, but Joshua is a conqueror and everything, and it's talking about the sin and everything, and he's going to save people from sin, and Joshua, is a conqueror and stuff. But even more kind of relevant potentially is Joshua the high priest. Now, this is not something that springs to mind probably for most people, but in Zechariah 3, which I have here, put it down for you. Zechariah the prophet has a vision, and in his vision he sees Joshua the high priest. So it begins with Joshua the high priest was standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing right there accusing him, and he's got dirty clothes and stuff, and God gives him new clothes, and then it says, put a clean turban on your head. So he did, and the angel stood by, and then this bit about Joshua the high priest becomes really messianic prophecy, and it says the angel of the Lord gave this charge to Joshua the high priest. This is what the Lord, and so his name, so Jesus is Joshua, Joshua is Jesus. So if you think of it this way as well, it's like the angel of the Lord charged to Jesus. This is what the Lord Almighty says: if you walk in obedience to me and keep my commandments, then you will govern my house and have charge of my courts, and I will give you a place among those standing here. Great, right, so he's the high priest. Listen, high priest Joshua, Jesus, you and your associates seated before you, you are men, symbolic of things to come. I'm going to bring my servant, the branch, which we talked about before. See the stone I have set in front of Joshua. There are 7 eyes on that one stone, and I will engrave an inscription on it, says the Lord Almighty, and I will remove sin from the land in a single day. In that day, each of you will invite your neighbour to sit under a vine and a fig, and declares the Lord. So it's really messianic, and particularly because it says the servant, my servant, the branch, and the branch is a messianic title. So it's like the Messiah. So it's like, I'm going to bring my servant, the Messiah. And then it's interesting because there's the 7 eyes, and then the 7 eyes come up again in Revelation, because when Jesus appears as a lamb, he has the 7 eyes, and Jesus is the rock of my salvation and all that. So he's a stone, so it's a stone with 7 eyes instead of a lamb with 7 eyes, but it's all Jesus. and it's got engraved on it and stuff like that, and again that comes up in Revelation. So it's just a really fascinating connection then back to that name and everything. So, and the passage, as I said, as you saw, was like, I'm going to free the land from sin in a single day, and that is the prophecy that came in Zechariah. So it's the same here, and he's going to save, the Lord saves from sin. Lastly, obviously, you got Mary, and she has a baby. And then Matthew, sorry, I can't think of his name then, points us back again to other prophecies. So all this took place, fulfill what was in the Lord had said through the prophet: the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. And so, we'll kind of conclude it, wrap it up there. Already gone over time. Apologies for any unsuccinct things, but I'll see what I can link below that will back up what we've been talking about. And hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. If you're a patron, thanks for being a patron, and if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Thanks again. Cheers. Bye.